Before the final emperor was deposed, the Roman state was breaking apart from the outside in. Two geopolitical blows fractured the city's civic spine: the sack of Rome by Alaric in 410, followed by a destructive Vandal raid in 455. The Vandals seized the North African provinces, severing the maritime trade routes that sustained Italy. This fiscal decapitation meant without African grain and taxes, the state could no longer fund its own military. To maintain a basic level of defense, the administration began relying entirely on allied mercenary armies. This created a shadow government, where barbarian generals, men like Ricimer and Orestes, held the actual levers of state control. These generals operated behind the scenes, elevating symbolic puppet emperors to the throne, while keeping military authority for themselves. By this point, the man wearing the imperial purple was a powerless figurehead. By the middle of the 5th century, the Western Roman Empire was no longer a functioning state. It was a rotting architectural facade waiting for a final push. That push came from a soldier named Odoacer. Born around 433 AD, he was a product of the chaotic, multi-ethnic military environment that emerged after the collapse of Attila the Hun's empire. Historical sources disagree on his exact tribal origins. Chroniclers of the era label him the Scyrian, a Rugian, or a Goth, while some modern scholars suggest Turkic or Hunnic ancestry. According to a biography written shortly after his death, a young, poorly dressed Odoacer sought the blessing of the monk Saint Severinus. The monk reportedly looked at the soldier and prophesied, "Go to Italy, soon you will make rich gifts to many." Odoacer entered the Roman military and rose rapidly. In 476, the mercenary troops stationed in Italy demanded a 1/3 share of Italian land as payment for their service. The Roman commander, Orestes, refused. The mutiny that followed was a pragmatic strike born from these unmet fiscal demands. The soldiers needed a leader to secure their pay, and they chose Odoacer. On August 23, 476, the mutinous troops officially proclaimed Odoacer as their rex, or king. 12 days later, on September 4, Odoacer captured the imperial capital of Ravenna. He deposed Orestes' son, the boy emperor Romulus Augustulus, bringing the Western imperial line to a halt. The Roman Senate then performed the final symbolic act of the fall. They packed up the imperial insignia, the crowns and ceremonial markers of the Western emperor, and shipped them east to Emperor Zeno in Constantinople. Their message to Zeno was that the West no longer required a separate monarch. Odoacer would now rule as Rex Italiae, King of Italy, acting under the remote authority of the Eastern Emperor. By ending the illusion of a Western emperor, Odoacer dismantled the remains of the Roman state while taking control of its surviving administrative machinery. To govern effectively, Odoacer co-opted the Roman elite. He filled high state offices with traditional aristocrats, including prominent senators like Boethius and Symmachus, to maintain civic order. He also stabilized the economy through a conservative fiscal policy. To show respect for the Senate, Odoacer reintroduced the Senatus Consulto, or SC, mark on copper coins, a traditional stamp of senatorial approval. In matters of faith, he practiced religious tolerance. Odoacer was an Arian Christian, yet he actively protected the mainstream Trinitarian state church and rarely interfered with its internal affairs. Odoacer maintained the Roman administrative framework, modifying existing laws and bureaucracy to function within a new, sub-Roman reality. This autonomous success eventually made him a target. In Constantinople, Emperor Zeno grew threatened by Odoacer's stability and decided to remove him through strategic proxy warfare. Zeno unleashed Theodoric the Great, directing him and his Ostrogoth forces to move westward, invade Italy, and displace the king. The invasion culminated in a 3-year siege of Ravenna. Trapped behind the city's fortified marshes, Odoacer was finally forced into a power-sharing agreement with Theodoric in early 493. The agreement was a trap. 10 days after the surrender, at a reconciliation banquet called Ad Laurentum, Theodoric drew his sword and personally murdered Odoacer, slicing him from collarbone to thigh. Despite the violence of his death, Odoacer's 17-year reign demonstrated that Roman administrative systems could survive the transition from an imperial center to a local barbarian kingdom.